Woo! Welcome to the Red Kingdom. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9 The News and Talk of Bloomington Normal. So do appreciate you tuning in each and every single morning, man. We've got so much to get to this morning. I do want to talk about the woke Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. Of course, he's defending illegal immigrants and he's blasting slave owners. Dead slave owners, he's saying that slave owners, they're the true undocumented immigrants. And it's like, wait a second, man, they've been dead. Nobody is a slave owner currently, right? It's illegal to be a slave owner. I mean, of course, you have human trafficking. Done by a lot of these refugee nonprofit organizations. So I guess you could make the argument that they're enslaving immigrants and sending immigrants over here and exploiting their labor, including children. But Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson is defending illegal immigrants and he's blasting the dead slave owners who enslaved African Americans back in the 1800s, and they're all dead. And, this is kind of hilarious. He talks about the Constitution and everything. The Constitution, so the 14th Amendment actually addressed this. The slave owners actually tried to back then, and I call, all Democrats now, they're actually the slave owners. And you're the slave, right? So Brandon Johnson, he talks about these dead slave owners and how it's unconstitutional what Donald Trump is doing with the immigrants and deporting them. Look, folks, the 14th Amendment addressed this. States and cities cannot be sanctuary states and cities because the 14th Amendment was crafted because the southern states, the Democrat states, back in the 1800s after the Civil War, what they tried to do was say that they had decision-making power over the citizenship status of the newly freed black slaves. Okay, the newly freed black slaves, they tried to say that you're not a citizen, the states back then. So the 14th Amendment actually clarifies this. This is all the federal government. Your federal citizenship supersedes, proceeds, and takes precedent over your state level counterpart. And that's all thanks to the 14th Amendment, because the Democrats back then tried to say, we get to determine who citizenships are in this country, or who are citizens in this country, and we're the arbiters of citizenship. And the federal government came in, amended the Constitution, and made it to where, hey, no, your federal citizenship actually supersedes and precedes your state level counterpart, and you don't get a say, sanctuary state Illinois, in the matter. Your the federal government deals with citizenship. Thank you, 14th Amendment. And here you still have Democrats trying to, do this, to have so much more power than they actually have. It's not up to the states. It's not up to cities. It's a federal issue. So we're going to get to the Chicago mayor defending these illegal immigrants. I also want to get to the former FEMA head. She's now making bizarre claims that the suffering North Carolina residents, they're grateful to FEMA. Yeah, I don't know who she's talking to, but I'll tell you right now, most North Carolina residents, people that I know who live in those states, North Carolina, South Carolina, they're not very grateful to the agency at all. So we're going to get to that. But also, the governor recently banned Jan 6 attendees and Jan 6 rioters. I mean, it's kind of crazy, the wording of this letter. So he sent a letter to CMS. This is the Central Management Services. Essentially, it's HR for state government. And he's banning them from ever holding a job ever again. So in state government, or I think it even, like, the letter, it's so vague, I might include local government jobs as well. It's totally going to be fought in the courts. Jan 6 protester Brandon Struck, he called on other protesters to apply and then later sue the state for discrimination. That's exactly what this is. They're pardoned, number one. Number two, whatever happened to serving your debt to society? I always talk about how Democrats, they're out there, criminal justice reform. These poor black men, the justice system was weaponized against them, and they were wrongfully convicted. They had to plead guilty. Our plea bargains system is just weaponized, and they weren't guilty, but they had to take a plea bargain. And they've destroyed their lives now, and we need criminal justice reform. They've gone as far as to say, like, we're not even going to call our felons or our convicted felons or our criminals anymore. They're justice impacted individuals. No. Actually, through this, it's a program, and people are going to say, oh, don't be misleading, Kat. It's a program within the government. And they, through this program, this single program within Illinois government, they won't refer to these criminals as criminals. They change the name of criminals to justice impacted individuals. I think it's so hilarious. You've got the same people who yell and scream at the sky about how Donald Trump is a convicted felon, refuse to call actual convicted felons people who, kill people, right? Donald Trump, he didn't kill anybody. It was maybe like a paperwork error, okay, what he was convicted of, like a couple of what usually is charged as misdemeanors, by the way, and the justice system was weaponized against him in order to get him to be called a convicted felon. They don't call actual convicted felons, murderers, people who are doing drive-by shootings, they don't call them convicted felons. They call them justice-impacted individuals. So we're going to get to that because that's going to be huge because, I know people who haven't been convicted or charged that they were there that day. Obviously, they were attendees. Now the FBI might have come to their house, questioned them. In JB's letter to CMS, the CMS director, he says accused or convicted. So accused is much different than charged. You could be accused of anything, really. So it could just be people who were there that day who can't hold a job in government, in Illinois government at all, either that state government or local municipal government. So that's pretty shocking, just people who were there that day. Yeah, so we're going to get to all of that. But first, I do want to talk a little bit about Canada. So, you're screaming at the sky liberals. Let me read JB's tweet here. JB, he says, no other state in the nation imports more goods to Canada than the land of Lincoln, and Illinois is one of the top 5 states in exports to both Canada and Mexico. Altogether, Illinois exports support 800,000 jobs now at risk thanks to Trump's tax on working families. So this is Governor J.B. Pritzker. Canada is now talking about cutting off our oil or whatever. And there's like, oh, there's going to be a trade war. Trump's getting us into a trade war. No. Donald Trump knows exactly what he's doing. Okay, I've talked a lot about the lumber industry in Canada. Okay, now they tax their citizens in Canada, the Canadians, into oblivion, and it's all government subsidized lumber. Okay, and then they dump it here into the United States, and it's really, really cheap because they can outprice our lumber industry in that they just keep getting government subsidies. They keep getting the government subsidies, so they're able to charge very, very cheap prices for that lumber. And the American lumber industry has been completely just decimated by this cheap Canadian lumber that's been poured into the United States. And we don't have those jobs anymore. Our housing prices are going up because we're not making it here, and we have to wait for the lumber to come here. And it's not America first. Donald Trump is doing an America first agenda. Okay, so does the United States purchase a lot of Canadian oil exports? Yes. Survey says yes, we do. We actually purchase 97% of the oil they export, you guys export. So we do purchase a lot of oil from Canada. 97% of the oil exports from Canada that we purchase, that accounts for 81% of your guys' entire oil production. Okay, so we're like the biggest buyers of this oil. Okay, now for some reason they've got it in their head, Canadians got it in their head that we desperately need to purchase this oil, okay, from them. That's not true. Our oil, you get the screaming at the sky liberals like Governor J.B. Pritzker, our oil and our energy sector is going to die without the Canadian exports. Everything, it's going to die. Our economy is going to die. Illinois' economy is going to die if we don't get those exports. And it's like, No, it's not. Like I said, Canadian lumber is cheap crap that they subsidize, and it's unfair that they get to make all of the money on the lumber if they just get to, subsidize it, tax their citizens into oblivion to pay for the lumber, and we can't compete with that. So we're making it more equitable. Same with the oil here. Let me get to this. So our oil and energy sector is not going to die without Canadian exports. Do we purchase a lot of oil? Yes. It is not going to die. Okay, our oil and energy sector. There is a very specific reason why we purchase so much Canadian oil. Because they give it to us at a discount. Well, why do they give us so much oil at a discount? Well, simply put, it's because about 75% of your guys' Canadians' total oil production is sour heavy crude. Okay, and Canada doesn't refine their oil. They don't refine it. Okay, so it's sour heavy crude. Essentially, this is raw oil, pretty much unusable until we refine it for energy. Okay, so that's a lot of work on the United States to do, but we do it because it's cheaper for us, because they are selling us it at a discount because it's not refined. So why doesn't Canada just refine their oil, eh? It's because they actually can't. Like, their refineries can't handle sour crude. They can't handle this raw oil, and you guys don't even have enough money to build and maintain infrastructure to transport that oil from your own country across your own country. So we have to put in all the work to refine the oil. We have to put in all the work to transport that oil to this country, across their country to this country. And, if you were able to refine it in the first place, you can't even transport it across your own country because you don't have the infrastructure or the building to do it. They actually couldn't do it if they were refining it. So they're just pumping like raw oil, and we get it at a discount because it's raw. And look, folks, so the reason we get to purchase the lion's shares of the oil production at a highly discounted rate is because it's raw oil. Okay, nobody really wants it. The United States is stupid enough and has been stupid enough to be purchasing this from Canada. I mean, it's essentially charity. Okay, we're purchasing it off of them, and we're putting in all the work to make it actually be able to be used. And the sour oil is packed with an H2S gas, and it's the second most lethal gas on the planet. And right next to what happens if you burn it. Okay, so because it's heavily discounted, we actually save money by purchasing the exported oil. But look, folks, it's not, we save money. It's not like we're reliant on it. Okay, we're pretty much doing Canada a favor. And yes, we save a few dollars doing this. Versus us refining our own oil coming out of the Bakken Shell, that's where it's coming out of, that pipeline. We could just refine that oil. It's not as cheap, but it's also American jobs. It's good for the economy, and it accounts for 61% of our oil production, which is sour heavy crude as well. So we have to refine it ourselves and do all of that. So yeah, we're getting it at a discount, but and now you add in the factor that crude oil counts for 16% of anything Canada exports, and we buy 97% of that. Who's going to be hurting more economically if we stop buying that raw oil from you and we deal with refining just our own stuff coming out of that one pipeline, the Bakken? I think it's called the Bakken Shale. Bakken Shale. So if we just refine our own stuff, I think that we're just going to be just fine, okay? So they don't have the leverage they think they have. Crude oil by itself is $124 billion a year industry in Canada. And the only people really buying it, like I said, is the United States. Why? Because it's, it's raw oil. It takes a lot of work to refine it. We refine it ourselves. Even if they could refine it themselves, we would be the ones that would have to transport it across their country because they don't have the infrastructure to do that. We're the ones getting shafted here. Okay, really? I mean, we might be saving a couple of bucks, but we're kind of getting shafted. So, it's $124 billion a year. I think it's going to affect Canada more if they don't have us purchase it, because who are they going to sell it to? Nobody's going to buy it because it's not refined and that's not being transported. So selling raw oil down the Keystone Pipeline to America refineries, $124 billion a year. I think you guys, Canada, you don't have the leverage you think you have economically. They think that they have all this leverage, and what really needs to happen, and what Donald Trump is doing, we're not playing nice anymore. We're not going to let you screw us over, okay? So they're ripping us off, clearly, with this, raw oil. It takes us a lot of work. I mean, we might as well just do it here in the United States, out of the Bakken Shale pipeline. Okay, we might as well just do it. The Keystone Pipeline, to the American refineries where we have to refine it. I mean, it's not that big of a deal for us to do it ourselves. We've been doing it. We just kind of get it at a discounted rate. It's cheap. It might save us a few dollars, but whatever. You're looking down the barrel of a 25% tariff. We're not bullying you. If you just stopped ripping us off, you wouldn't be looking down that barrel of a 25% tariff. We have to make this equitable on both sides. Same with the lumber industry. It's not fair that you get to come in here, violate trade agreements, and dump your lumber that's been subsidized. And there's no way that we could compete with those prices because we don't subsidize our lumber industry. Well, we probably do a little bit, but not to the extent that Canada does. We don't subsidize our lumber industry like that, and we'd never be able to compete with those prices, and it's totally unfair. It's not equitable. So get it together. Build the infrastructure to be able to refine your own oil and then transport it and make it a product worth buying. Otherwise, and stop with this whole trade war. You'd never win with the United States. You're just not going to do it. All right, I got to take a quick break, but come on, folks. This is not oil that we don't even really, we buy it out of like literally sympathy. Like it's like, all right, Canada, I guess we'll buy what you're putting out. Maybe it saves us a little bit of money, but not really. So, Canada threatening to dry up their oil supply to the United States. Give me a break. Who cares? I'll be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Hey, good morning. So do appreciate you tuning in. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends. But come on, folks. I mean, it's the same thing with the lumber industry, kind of. You've got this government subsidized lumber dumped into the United States. We can't compete with that, our lumber industry. And you wonder why housing prices are going up so much. It's because we're relying on another country to come in and dump all of this cheap lumber in here. And it would just make more sense if we made it right here and if it was more equitable. These people always say equity, equity, equity. It's not fair in any sense of the word. It's definitely not fair to the United States what's going on with the lumber industry, but also the oil. This is raw oil. We're getting at a discounted rate. It's highly discounted because it's raw oil. We have to refine it. Even if they could refine it, they wouldn't even be able to transport it to us. Okay, so we are not being shafted if they cut off our oil supply from Canada. That is not a big deal. We can just go straight to our Bakken Shale, which is exactly what Donald Trump he knows exactly what he's doing. He wants to go to our pipelines, and he wants to be the one to bring all these jobs back to the Americans who run those pipelines, and we're refining it. We can just refine our own stuff, which we already do. The Bakken Shale, we refine the oil that comes out of Canada as well. it's not going to hurt us at all any. I mean, this is just, discounted oil that is almost like a burden. I'm trying to think of like an example. Like if people buy you a gift from the dollar store, like these dollar store candles or like dollar store oven mitts that don't really work, that's kind of what we're talking about here. Yeah, I mean, it's nice that you gave us it for $1, and you thought about us and you gave us this, gift for oven mitts that were $1 candle at the, Dollar General. And, it's deeply discounted. And then you gave it to us. But like, if I didn't, the candle or the oven mitts wind up like in the back part of the cabinet, and I never really use them because they don't work as well as in comparison to like maybe a candle from Yankee Candle or something like that. Like, come on now, or a nice oven mitt from a more expensive oven mitt that actually works, right? So, and we don't have to put effort in to refine this oil. Like, let's get oil. Like, we're already refining our own oil. We have to do that anyway. We might as well just do it here. And yeah, it's just the Canadians, they think that they've got all this leverage. They don't. I do want to get to January 6th, the rioters and the state jobs. It's going to be interesting. There's probably going to be lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit here. Actually, Brandon Strzok is calling on anybody who was there that day to apply. And then, excuse me, need some more coffee. And then later, it's Monday, later, apply and sue the state for discrimination. Governor J.B. Pritzker has banned all J6 2021 rioters from ever being employed by any branch of government within the Illinois state government. So I think this, like, according to the letter, it sounds like it's going to be local government as well, like local governments within inside Illinois. So like say the city manager, if you're going for city manager, or if you're going for some other, role in government that is a paid position. So here's the problem with the letter mainly. It looks like he's deliberately saying accused or convicted. So accused is much different than charged. Okay, if you were charged and never convicted, that's different than accused. And I don't even know why we're talking about this, because the J6ers were pardoned. A pardon is a pardon. Okay, so I understand not wanting to hire, somebody convicted of even, felons or convicted felons or people convicted of even misdemeanors. If I was an employer, I'd want to know if somebody was convicted of a misdemeanor or was a felon. And I'm not even necessarily against that, but here's the thing. All of these people were pardoned. So what does that mean? That means that conviction goes away. You were pardoned for your crimes, okay? So, yeah, there's nothing here that makes any sense. Straka said, Brandon Strzok, who is the founder of the Walk Away Foundation, this is an organization that talks about how Democrats, need to walk away from the Democrat Party. So Brandon Strzok was originally a Democrat, and he walked away from the Democrat Party, pleaded guilty to one misdemeanor of disorderly conduct and disruptive conduct. And he was pardoned with the J6 protesters, and they were all cleared. So number one, even if they weren't pardoned, whatever happened to paying your debt to society? Okay, you paid your debt to society. We're going to get to Brandon Strzok, how many years he had to deal with, federal supervision, federal authorities supervising him. He already served his time, paid his fees. What more can they do to these Jan 6ers, really? Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. I do want to get to this story. Governor J.B. Pritzker banning. Now, this is according to a letter. I haven't seen like any executive order or legislation that's been passed. Really, it should be through the state legislator. They should be debating this issue. But we know how Governor J.B. Pritzker operates. He'll just do executive order after executive order. And but this wasn't even really an executive order, so I don't know really the validity of this ban. This was in a letter to the CMS director. So the CMS director, and I think that this was done on purpose because Governor J.B. Pritzker tends to get sued a lot by his own citizens. He's been the defendant in the Safety Act case. He was the defendant in the so-called assault weapons ban case. He was also sued for the mask mandates. So, I mean, he just keeps getting sued, Governor J.B. Pritzker does, okay? So, in October of 2021, Brandon Strzok, he's the founder of the Walkaway Foundation. The Walkaway Foundation is just simply like calling on Democrats to walk away from the Democrat Party. So, Brandon Strzok, he pleaded guilty to one misdemeanor back in October of 2021 of disorderly conduct and disruptive conduct. Okay, so he was on, I believe it's the east side. Yeah, the east side, which wasn't, the side where these rioters like went into the Capitol, busted out a couple of windows. Really, even on the west side, I think that some of those people, definitely the Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, who, by the way, they say that Proud Boys are like white supremacists. The Proud Boys actually was run by, has leadership, and the leadership is actually like, I think he's a Mexican Hispanic. So, I mean, yeah, a pretty bad white supremacist if he's, a brown man. Yeah, they were over on that side. And like I said, and have said for years now, most people who were on that side were forced into the Capitol, in that you had Capitol police officers shooting them down with rubber bullets getting into their cheeks. They had to pry the rubber bullets out of their cheeks. They were gassed, and the Capitol police officers essentially had them surrounded. So people were busting into the Capitol to quite literally get away from the non-lethal ammunitions that were deployed on the protesters there on the west side. But you've got Brandon Strzok. He says this: I think everybody should go right now. Any J6 defendant should go and apply to work in Illinois state government and then sue them. In fact, I might go do that right now myself. You can't just selectively decide that you're going to employ a group of people whose convictions have been, you're not going to employ a group of people whose convictions have been overturned, okay? Not to mention a vast majority of those convictions were misdemeanors. And I'm not even sure you can prevent people with a misdemeanor conviction from seeking employment. Number one, all of these convictions have been cleared. They've been cleared, okay, with the pardon. Okay, number one. Number two, even if they weren't cleared, these are misdemeanor convictions. And what really bothers me is you've got these Democrats in the state house. This is all they talk about. And every single day there's people in like either purple t-shirts, red t-shirts, whatever, screaming about criminal justice reform. They're from Chicago and they, want to address the crime. And really, these are nonprofit organizations that don't do very much at all. In fact, there's even, and I'm going to get to this, the Peacekeeper program. It gets millions and millions of dollars. And these are convicted felons who they're given vests to go out there and play social worker. And we pay them like $200 a day to go out there and play social worker in the Chicago streets where the crime is just out of control. So in this letter, Governor J.B. Pritzker, what he did to Raven Devon, now she's the director of the state's central management services. The best way I could describe CMS is like an HR for the state government, okay? No one who attempts to overthrow the government should serve in government. Now, this letter is very vague. In a sense, he talks about, the people you shouldn't be employing are people convicted or accused. So accused is very different from charged. So charged or convicted, that would make sense. But accused is like somebody who, you can accuse anybody of anything. Okay, so you could accuse somebody of being there, like say they were there that day, but they were on the east side. They weren't even near the Capitol. They just went to the rally. And by the time that the Capitol was breached, they were like, sitting at a Cracker Barrel or something. But they were there earlier that day. I know people who were investigated by the FBI, talked to by the FBI. The FBI interviewed them. They were never charged, never convicted of any crime, because, my friend knows how to handle the FBI, right? But they were, in a way, accused. They had the FBI come to their home and question them. So are they going to be, denied access to, government jobs at a local level and state level? That's the other thing about this letter. It's very vague about what jobs we're talking about here. Are they like local level, like a city manager? Are we talking about, somebody who works in DCFS or some other state agency? So Brandon Strzok said the left and Pritzker for decades have been crying about criminal justice reform, and they've been crying about how our prisons are filled with Black men who pleaded guilty to crimes that they didn't commit because our justice system is weaponized against them. Black men they'll say, oh, Black men take plea deals, and they admit guilt in situations where they're not truly guilty, which I do think happens quite a lot. Now suddenly you've got Trump supporters who are finding themselves tied up and targeted by that same justice system where Black men take plea deals and they're not actually guilty. And you've got the Trump supporters now who find themselves in that same situation. And then all of a sudden these people are saying, oh no, the system is not weaponized. The Trump supporters, they're the ones who, insurrection, although nobody was charged nor convicted of insurrection, by the way. It was all trespassing and misdemeanors, like of disorderly conduct. No insurrection. Nobody was charged or convicted of insurrection, by the way. So to call it insurrection or to call them insurrectionists is completely misleading and wrong and not true. So Brandon Strzok and Democrats, Brandon Strzok said that Democrats use the term convicted felon to taunt Trump all of the time. I think that this is interesting. The Democrats, they're always like, oh, people deserve a second chance. People deserve a second chance, and they're not defined by their criminal convictions. They go so as far as to change the language in our law to not define them as criminals anymore, but to call them justice impacted individuals. Okay, that's what we're talking about here with Democrats. So these rioters were accused or convicted, charged of a combination of, felonies and misdemeanors. This is what Governor J.B. Pritzker said. Including but not limited to violence against law enforcement officers, threats against members of Congress, destruction of federal property, and many other crimes. These crimes threaten public safety as members of Congress, staff, and other workers were forced to hide from violence for hours. Give me a break. Let's talk about who you do employ, JB. I want to talk about this Peacekeepers program. This is a program in Illinois. It's called a violence prevention program, okay? And what they do, they hire ex-convicts, and these are convicts who, are charged with it. And I'm going to get to Oscar Montez. That's his name. He's a peacekeeper, was an apparent peacekeeper. Okay, so he had the vest on and everything, and he actually pulled somebody out of their car while they were at a stoplight and curb stomped him. He had to go get his jaw reconstructed. It was a group of people who beat up this guy in Chicago, and he was a peacekeeper, or at least looked like one with this vest. And these peacekeepers are publicly funded. And what they do, they're supposed to do conflict mediation. So they're supposed to go out there, get paid $200 a day to go act like a social worker. And these are the worst of the worst. So Oscar Montez, prior to becoming a peacekeeper and then dragging somebody out of their car and curb stomping them, essentially, dragging him out of his car, he actually was convicted. Well, at least he was, charged with attempted murder or something like that, something crazy. And he was originally charged with that, but took a plea deal. It was aggravated discharge of a firearm while operating a vehicle. Come on, that's a drive-by shooting, okay? And originally he was charged with murder, okay, or attempted murder. And It was a drive-by shooting. That's really what this is. It was gang drive-by shooting. That's what it sounds like. Okay. And he got off, with this plea deal, got out, and then he winds up getting paid by the government. And then on government dime, he goes out and he commits more crimes when he's supposed to be going out there and solving crime or resolving crime and preventing violence. Okay. So that's what we're doing here in the state of Illinois. If the Peacekeepers program exists, it makes no sense as to why we don't hire J6ers, even if they did the worst of the worst crimes. We're talking worst of the worst crimes. Nobody was convicted of attempted murder, okay, for these J6 crimes. Nobody was convicted of that. They were all pretty much, a vast majority of them were misdemeanors. Maybe you'd had some violence or assault on a police officer. That's probably the worst of the worst, which is an attempted murder, okay? Attempted murder is discharging your firearm in the direction of somebody and trying to do a drive-by shooting, and then you miss. Okay, that's attempted murder. That's like the worst of the worst. Not saying that, hitting an officer is not bad, okay? But I would say that murder is probably worse than hitting somebody, okay? I think common sense tells you that it is worse than hitting somebody. Okay, so if the Peacekeeper program exists and we pay those people with taxpayer dollars, I have no problem paying somebody who's charged with a misdemeanor, okay, disorderly conduct and trespassing, okay. I have no problem paying them with taxpayer dollars and them serving in government. Brandon Strzok, like I said, he was on the east side on January 6th. He never entered the Capitol. What happened, this is what he says, to the element of being able to serve your sentence, pay your debt to society, and move on with your life. Okay, even if the J6 defendants were guilty, which they're not guilty, they were pardoned, okay, but if they were guilty of what they were accused of, which is not the case, in most cases they're not, okay, they're not guilty of what they were accused of. They had to take plea deals because they were looking at terrorism charges, and they take these plea deals. The government was weaponized against them. Here's what Brandon Strzok says: I was days away from completing my sentence that included 4 years for a federal supervision, house arrest, jail time, fees, and I did all of it. And now you're telling me that even though I'm pardoned, I'm completely, and I've completed pretty much all of my sentence at that point, because it's been 4 years, I've completed my sentence. I'm not allowed to have employment. So that's what you're telling me. I completed my sentence, essentially 4 years. A lot of these J6ers were in terrible conditions, no food, no water, no toilet paper. They were constantly being transported back and forth to different prisons. They couldn't get comfortable right in a prison. And that was all by design. But they were very mistreated, and they did that for, 4 years, and then all of a sudden they get pardoned, rightfully so, because they're not guilty of what they did, in most of these cases. And Donald Trump pardoned them. Now you're telling them that, it doesn't matter that you paid your debt to society. It doesn't matter that you were pardoned. You are not going to have employment with the state of Illinois. So Governor J.B. Pritzker, he cited a law. I've got to take a quick break, but we're going to be right back, and I'll wrap up this story. And I want to get to Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson because he is, of course, defending illegal immigrants. I'll be right back. Hey, go ahead and smash that like button. Share this out with your friends. Yes, so we have Governor J.B. Pritzker talking about this law within this letter that he sent to the CMS director, Raven Devon. Okay, he cited a law required to reject candidates for state employment who have engaged in infamous or disgraceful conduct. Okay, so apparently this is a state law, and it's baked in the cake. Okay, now I don't know when this law had been passed or what, but it's baked in the cake here. I don't even know what infamous or disgraceful conduct, what that truly means, and what the definition is under the law. I know that the J6ers probably don't meet it, okay? But Brandon Strzok, what he suggested is that, hey, Illinois voters, you have to stop voting these people in. They will, steal your taxpayer dollars. Really, that's what this is. This is a lawsuit waiting to happen, and the government is going to have to pay out to these J6ers in the form of a settlement. And we all know that the Illinois government doesn't make money; they take money. Okay, and it's your money. So we're going to have to use that tax money, settle those inevitable lawsuits that are going to be happening that discriminate. Really, this wouldn't be happening, or the lawsuits are going to happen because people are going to be discriminated against. They're discriminating against one group of people based on who they voted for. That's at the end of the day what this is all about. So stop voting these people into office. They don't care about you. They're lunatics and they're incapable of leading. Clearly, this is not what we should be devoting our time to. The Peacekeepers program, they're doing $200 a day to Oscar Montes. Look him up, Oscar Montes. And he was wearing a Peacekeeper vest. Oh, and it was confirmed that he was officially in the Peacekeepers, by the way. He and a group of about 7 or 8 other people pulled a man from his car, punched him, and kicked him to the ground. And I mean, it was so bad to the point where he, the man who was pulled out of his car and kicked and punched, it was so bad he had to get his face reconstructed, okay, via surgery. And this guy, I mean, and he got out on no bail. This guy did. The man wearing the neon vest, it was a Peacekeeper's vest, helped a group of people beat down and rob a motorist. According to the Chicago police report, the allegations come after the city and state officials applauded the use of peacekeepers as a tool to deploy over the Memorial Day weekend to tamper down the violence across the city. That's what they say. Okay, Oscar Montes, he was held without bail. So he had no bail. By Judge Maram Ahmad on charges of robbery, aggravated battery, and unlawful vehicle invasion. Okay, so this guy, prior to this, of course, had charges and a conviction of, what is it? Wrongful discharge of a firearm while operating a vehicle. That means drive-by shooting. Okay. So he was convicted of that in 2012. So he was on parole for a 2012 case in which he pleaded guilty to aggravated discharge of a firearm into an occupied vehicle. This, of course, stems from an incident involving a rival gang. That Montez was part of a gang, and it all kind of stems from that. So it's gang violence, right? And Montez was a gang member who tried to do a drive-by shooting. Now, he was originally charged with attempted murder, but pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of aggravated discharge of a firearm into an occupied vehicle. Okay, so that guy was getting paid $200 a day. Turns out, to go out there and keep the peace, but turns out he wasn't keeping the peace at all. And in fact, he pulled the guy from his car and almost beat him to death. I mean, to the point where his face had to get reconstructed. Okay, so this Peacekeepers program is probably, I mean, there's very little things where I say that we need to address it today. This is something that needs to be addressed today because the Peacekeepers program, millions of dollars. Let me look this up actually. Okay. Now, overall, this isn't the Peacekeepers program, but it's money that was doled out last year for violence prevention programs like the Peacekeepers program, $140 million. So overall, let me look for the Peacekeepers program and how much they got. I'm looking for that number, 140 million for violence prevention programs like the Peacekeepers program. I'm not too sure. I want to say it was like almost 30 million. Point is, they're getting millions of dollars funneled into this program. And we've got ex-convicts quite literally employed by our government, and you're paying them with your tax dollars. And these are people who have attempted murder charges or were accused of attempted murder. I mean, this is insane. And continue to wreak havoc in Chicago while wearing the peacekeeper vest and while being employed by the state. Good morning. Hey, you're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. I really wanted to wrap that story up. This is insane. I know the Peacekeepers program, I think it's like near $30 million, like that it's gotten like year over year. This Peacekeeper program, it's kind of new where they hire ex-cons to go out there and play therapist essentially in the streets of Chicago. I talked about Oscar Montez. Oscar Montez is a guy who, while wearing a peacekeeper vest, he was a peacekeeper. That's been confirmed, where he was on tape pulling out, he and like 6 to 7 other men pulled out this victim, and they were beating him and robbing him. He was charged with that, but prior to becoming a peacekeeper, he served over 10 years for aggravated discharge of a firearm into an occupied vehicle. That's a drive-by gang, and it had to deal with the rival gang. Okay, this was gang related activity that he was a part of, but he gets employed by the state government. He was originally charged with attempted murder, but it got pled down, and then he served the time for the aggravated discharge of a firearm into a moving vehicle or occupied vehicle. So this is the type of people we're currently employing with state dollars, okay, with your tax dollars. That's the type of people who we're currently employing. And Governor J.B. Pritzker is going to make a fuss about J6ers who none of them were charged with attempted murder. Okay, none of them were. We're talking disorderly conduct. We're talking trespassing. We're talking mostly misdemeanors. In the more intense cases, we're talking felonies with assaulting a police officer. Okay. So JB, he cites this law in the letter. So it's not an executive order. It's not legislation that was, passed by both houses. This is just simply a letter that he wrote to Raven Devon, who is the director of CMS, which is essentially the HR of the state of Illinois. And he cites this letter, or cites this law, and it says, you're required as the director of CMS to reject candidates for state employment who have engaged in infamous or disgraceful conduct. Okay. Brandon Strzok, he's the founder of the Walkaway Foundation. He said, people have to stop voting for J.B. Pritzker. This is the problem, because what's going to wind up happening here? Let's play this out, okay? You're going to have to inevitably settle these lawsuits, J.B., because you're going to get lawsuit after lawsuit from these J6 defendants because you're discriminating against a group of people for simply voting a certain way. That's really what this is about. And you're going to use this as a ridiculous use of taxpayer funds to settle lawsuits like this. We need to stop voting these people in. They're lunatics, and they really aren't capable of leading in any kind of way. I got to take a quick break, but we're going to talk about Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson here next on Conservative Cat. Hey, good morning. Go ahead and smash that like button. Is it illegal what he did, or is that allowable? If allowed, then what about preventing Illinois state jobs for those who were pardoned by Joe Biden? Yeah, so there was a few people who were pardoned by Joe Biden, specifically this one woman. No, I'm not, or I think it's Crunwell. Let me look her up. She actually stole taxpayer money as the comptroller. Yeah, Rita Crunwell. Okay, so Rita Crunwell was pardoned by Joe Biden. She was the former Dixon comptroller, and she was convicted for stealing over $50 million from the city of Dixon, and she had her sentence commuted by Joe Biden. Okay, by President Joe Biden. This woman stole millions and millions of dollars over the course of several years, and She was commuted, had her sentence commuted by Joe Biden. I'd like to see if Rita Crundwell is going to, I mean, she actually served in government and stole money from the taxpayers, quite literally, to, you know, spend on her business ventures. She ran like a horse farm, I guess, and she was, you know, spending this money on like personal endeavors, right? This former comptroller, Rita Crundwell, who was convicted of stealing $50 million, over $50 million from the city. And she was just commuted by Joe Biden. I'd like to see, you know, Governor J.B. Pritzker talk about Rita Crundwell and how she isn't going to have a job with state government anymore, or with government in any kind of way. Okay. So I'd like to see something like that happen. Now, I don't think it's legal. I told you about the law there that Governor J.B. Pritzker cited within the letter. He's being very careful about this because it's definitely going to breed lawsuit after lawsuit, because people are going to cite discrimination for political affiliation. They're going to say that you're discriminating against me. My conviction is pardoned. Okay. So we're not talking about people who even served their sentence. Okay. And their records are cleared with a pardon. Okay. So with a pardon, that essentially means that you weren't, like, it's erased. Okay. That's what a pardon is. So you're discriminating against somebody because of their political affiliation. That might be where people go with the lawsuit, because you voted a certain way. I don't know how they're going to go about their lawsuits and what they're going to sue JB for exactly. But JB cited a law that says that you can't hire people with disgraceful or infamous conduct. Now, there's probably specific definitions for those under the Illinois law. I don't think that any of these J6ers are probably going to meet that definition. So the law that JB is citing is a stretch, likely. So yeah, I mean, yes, it's illegal, but like, people do illegal things all the time. Like Governor J.B. Pritzker does illegal things all the time. The Safety Act, unconstitutional. The assault weapons ban, the so-called assault weapons ban, that's highly unconstitutional. Sanctuary cities, sanctuary states, that's unconstitutional. Look at the 14th Amendment. Look at the origins of the 14th Amendment, where it came from. So, I mean, he does unconstitutional things all the time. He discriminates people against based on their political affiliation all of the time. Will he get away with it? I don't know. We'll have to see. We know that there's a couple of Illinois Supreme Court justices who have received millions of dollars in campaigns from the funds from this guy. So it's kind of like, if it gets up to the Illinois Supreme Court, likely it's going to go JB's way, but it would probably have to go to the United States Supreme Court in order for us to win. And I would imagine that that case would go all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, and that they'd take it, because it's a big deal. I mean, to have people whose records are clear and deny them employment is kind of outrageous. That's discriminating. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. You can find me always on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. I'm there. Earlier in the show, we were talking about Governor J.B. Pritzker banning J6ers from holding government jobs. And look, folks, I mean, this is somebody on the text line. They were like, Cat, is this illegal? Can he actually do this? Governor J.B. Pritzker has done unconstitutional and illegal things forever, since the beginning of time. Okay, the mask mandates, the Second Amendment, the violations there, where he is doing the assault weapons ban. That's the Second Amendment, violates the Second Amendment. You've also got the Safety Act, letting prisoners out, no cash bail, which is all unconstitutional. You've got the sanctuary state garbage, which is just unconstitutional as well. Sanctuary city stuff, all unconstitutional. Look at the 14th Amendment. Look at the origins of why the 14th Amendment actually exists. He does unconstitutional things all the time because he's a tyrant. Okay, he is a tyrant. So we can't be shocked that he's doing this. He's going to be, don't let this shock you. Now, if it goes up to the Supreme Court, like the Illinois Supreme Court, yeah, he probably will win because guess what? Our Supreme Court is corrupt. Mary Kay O'Brien, there's another judge there as well. They've received millions of dollars from Governor J.B. Pritzker via their campaign coffers. So they'll never recuse themselves. They haven't in years past with the SAFE-T Act, the the so-called assault weapons ban. They won't recuse themselves. But if it goes up to the United States Supreme Court, then yes, I definitely think this is going to be squashed. And he's being very careful about it right now. I think it's because he knows that it's discriminatory. These people don't even have convictions. When you're pardoned, you're cleared. Okay. These people don't even have convictions. I don't even think you're allowed to deny people employment in the state of Illinois if they are convicted of misdemeanors. Now, if you're a convicted felon, that's a different story. But yeah, I don't even think you're allowed to do this. Like, even if they were and had these convictions, but they don't because they're pardoned, I don't even think you can do it even if they were convicted of misdemeanors. But point is, there is going to be lawsuits. They are going to be settled, and who is going to have to deal with that? You and I as taxpayers, right? The state of Illinois is going to have to settle, and we're going to have to deal with that as taxpayers, which sucks. But he's being careful about it because it's not an executive order. He didn't do this via executive order. He didn't do this via the legislature. We're talking about a letter that was sent to the director of CMS. Okay, so it ultimately, it might be where she is listed as, the defendant. She got the orders. Now, if she follows through on those orders, then she would be opening herself up to litigation from the J6 defendants. I got to take a quick break, but we'll be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Hey, good morning. Go ahead and smash that like button. Share this out with your friends. Pritzker is a communist dictator. Yeah. I heard about her. Yeah, Rita Crunwell. That was the woman who was pardoned by Joe Biden. But yeah, Pritzker is definitely a communist dictator, 100%. I've talked about this several times where I think that the establishment Democrats, they are no longer they're no longer the leadership within the party. Okay, we're talking about Governor J.B. Pritzker, AOC, Gavin Newsom. These people are communists. Bernie Sanders, he likes to get out there and say that he's a communist socialist, but he does the same thing that the establishment Democrats do, where it's, you scratch my back, I scratch your back. The establishment Republicans do the same thing. They just kind of do it in different sectors. So a lot of the time you have the established Democrats, it's the healthcare industry where they scratch the back of the healthcare industry and they scratch the Democrats' back. The Republicans, they scratch the back of the military-industrial complex, and then they scratch their back, okay? So that's the establishment parties. Now, you've got a faction within the Democrat Party, which are your Governor J.B. Pritzker, and they're the communists. Like, quite literally, they make their millions off of globalist communist regimes. So we're talking the CCP, for example. Goshen, got a tax credit, and Governor J.B. Pritzker was influential in that and getting Goshen to come here. Goshen has ties to the CCP. They also have ties to slave labor practices, which is just insane. Child slave labor practices, by the way. But Goshen is, planned to come here to the United States, to Illinois specifically. And your Governor Gretchen Whitmer, she does the same thing in Michigan, okay? These are like your younger Democrats, and they're all about getting money from the globalist regimes and from foreign powers, because they don't believe in America. They don't believe in the American dream. They don't like America, and they would prefer we are all together in one new world order, okay? And they're all about communism, dictatorship. That's the faction within the Democrat Party, okay? Now, you have a faction within the Republican Party, and it's still kind of like we do favors for you, you do favors for us kind of deal. If you look at the, grassroots Republican candidates within the Republican Party, they're not getting these, $1 million checks from Boeing or from, the military industrial Honeywell industrial complex. Think of your Nikki Haley's. That's your establishment Republican. Now, within the Republican Party, there's a faction, and they're called grassroots candidates, okay? So they go and they get their money from the grassroots people. That's your $5, $10, $20, $15 donations while you're on the campaign trail. And in exchange, we're going to implement policy that benefits you. America First. So you have your America First faction within the Republican Party, and those are the best people. Sorry. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. So do appreciate you tuning in. Yes, I do want to get to Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. Now, he decided that the real issues at hand are the people who have been dead for over 100 years. Okay, and the fact that anyone would even pretend to care about illegal immigration is just, far less important, as he believes slave owners are, the real undocumented individuals who are criminals. Okay, so he doesn't care about illegal immigration, and anybody who cares about illegal immigration, they're just snoozing, I guess, according to Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. They're just, absolutely crazy because they're not focused on the true issue, which is, the slave owners, and he thinks that they're actually the undocumented individuals who are criminals. Slave owners, by the way, that have been dead over 100 years. Take a listen to this clip. This is Brandon Johnson talking about how you and we shouldn't care about illegal immigration. What we should care about are the dead slave owners. Here we go.
But here's what I'm getting at. This oversight committee, of all the things that they want to have sight over, they should look at the White House right now. That White House is being ran in one of the most raggedy forms of government that I've ever seen. If anybody is questioning whether or not what our country would look like had the Confederacy won, there should be no question now. They want us to be afraid. Do not be afraid, Chicago. Whether it's an invitation or a subpoena, I'm always going to stand up for the interests of working people, and I will not be intimidated by some weak individual who won't stand up to an individual who believes he's a supreme being right now. You're worried about Chicago? Look in your front yard. We have a president right now who is obfuscating his responsibilities that should be very clear based upon the Constitution. He is rejecting the Constitution of the United States of America. And if they want to have a real discussion about undocumented individuals who are criminals, they should look at the very individuals who enslaved my people and colonized this land. So whether it's an invitation or a subpoena, the people of Chicago will not be intimidated or threatened by any individual who is unwilling to look in their own front yard of where the real threat to our democracy lies. Thank you all very much.
Okay, so I guess the threat to our democracy here, folks, is dead slave owners that have been dead over 100 years. Johnson has proven how little he cares about his job. He defended and oversaw the Chicago migrant crisis while also doing everything he could possibly do to turn American citizens into second-class citizens, okay? That's what he's done as the mayor of Chicago. And like I said, it's not unconstitutional. He says his city is a sanctuary city. Governor J.B. Pritzker says his state is a sanctuary state. That's very unconstitutional. It's against the 14th Amendment, the origins here of the 14th Amendment. Southern Democrats, here we go again. Democrats doing this again after the Civil War. They tried to say that that the slaves, the newly freed slaves, they weren't actually citizens. Okay, so his party is actually the ones who wanted to further enslave and deport Black Americans, and the 14th Amendment corrected that and said that no, the states and cities, they don't get to determine citizenship. That's a federal issue. So he's done everything he could possibly do to turn American citizens into second-class citizens. Take a listen to this clip of Brandon Johnson being questioned by a reporter. Here we go.
Tom Holman showed up in Chicago and within 24 hours found a convicted sex offender who has been living in our city since 2009, flouting the sex offender registry. If he can do this, why can't you?
Because that's their job. That is their job. The federal
Your
government
job's not to keep
has
the
a
people of Chicago
responsibility
safe.
to make sure that individuals who are undocumented, who have been charged with, convicted of a crime, it is the federal government's responsibility to do their part and uphold the law. Our local police department, along with our public health department, along with our other sister agencies, are working to build a better, stronger, safer Chicago. And as we've stated repeatedly, those critical investments, you continue to see the results of those investments as violent crime continues to fall in Chicago. Thank you very much.
So that reporter was William J. Kelly. He's awesome. But yeah, he's saying, oh, it's not our job. Okay, but it is your job to, determine what a citizen is and isn't, I guess, in your city, because you guys are the ones who are defining what a citizen is and isn't. It's your job to do that, but it's not your job to, deport these individuals. That's also up to the federal government. Like, come on. Give me a break, Brandon Johnson. He claims it's not his job to follow the law, but will endlessly defend and enable these individuals who have broken the law, not only the entering the country through an illegal port of entry, but also defending those who enter through an illegal port of entry and then commit crimes like felony retail theft. You've got murder, in this case, where William J. Kelly was talking about. This was a sex offender. This was somebody who, has been living here since 2009, this criminal illegal alien. So there's criminal illegal aliens, there's illegal aliens who are illegal and are also criminals, but there's criminal illegal aliens who commit more crimes on top of entering the country illegally. So I want to get to this clip. This is about a Chicago judge who is releasing this Venezuelan and has released this Venezuelan migrant who was caught during an ICE immigration raid, and he is now back on the streets. So he was caught in an ICE immigration raid, and now you've got this Chicago judge who just let him go again. Take a listen.
One of the Venezuelan migrants swept up in immigration raids around Chicago this weekend is about to walk out of federal jail any minute and return to his girlfriend and her parents in the suburbs. Some of these cases have been sealed, but the I-team was in federal court as Edward Martinez Cermeño stepped before a judge and pleaded his case for release. Walking the halls of Chicago's federal court building, Maria and Ruben are still trying to shake off the trauma of Sunday night. Much like these raids across the country, the Venezuelan couple says immigration agents stormed their Schaumburg home. Speaking only in Spanish, Maria told our Michelle Gallardo, she said, they were pointing their guns at me and my husband. They knocked him to the ground. Federal agents carried out Maria's daughter's boyfriend, 24-year-old Edward Martinez Cermeño. Federal prosecutors say Martinez Cermeño crossed the border illegally in western Texas in 2023 and made his way to the Chicago area. That charge is merely a misdemeanor, not a felony. The They just left without an explanation. They didn't show us any documents. We were scared. We were all in crisis. Tuesday, his appointed public defender told a judge Martinez Cerminho had served as a police officer in Venezuela. Cook County court records show Chicago police arrested Edward Martinez Cerminho for a felony retail theft in January 2024, and he failed to appear for court, triggering a warrant for his arrest. As Martinez Cerminho stood in federal court Tuesday, White House officials were driving home President Trump's message.
If you are an individual, a foreign national, who illegally enters the United States of America, you are, by definition, a criminal.
Martinez Cerminho's police record reflects a nonviolent criminal charge, not a conviction. And with a pending court date and asylum hearing set for April 2026, the judge ordered Martinez Cerminho released immediately.
Immigration Customs Enforcement has the hardest job in law enforcement.
A 15-year veteran of Homeland Security, Jason Hauser last served as chief of staff for ICE during the Biden administration. He says he has concerns about what he's heard and seen in these roundups from his former agency.
When you sort of make it about this quota game, or you make it about, we need to bring as many people into custody, that takes emphasis away from public safety.
Okay, so I wanted to play some of that because it's very important that you know that a Chicago judge let this guy go, and he has felony retail theft on top of, and I don't understand this because she had called it a misdemeanor, which under the Biden administration, they might have been calling it a misdemeanor, but it's not a misdemeanor, illegally entering the country through an illegal port of entry. Okay, that's a felony. I don't know why she called it a misdemeanor. It must have been like maybe a plea where, it's not the, you entered through an illegal port of entry, and they kind of like, swayed it to where he would be able to have a misdemeanor for that in 2023 when he illegally entered the country. But we're talking about felony retail. He's coming into the country illegally, and then he's stealing things. Okay, so, and then he was let go by a judge to go back out onto the streets after ICE had picked him up in one of these raids. Chicago is actively trying to keep these people out on the street. It doesn't matter what Brandon Johnson claims the law of the land in Chicago is, because it doesn't mean anything when it comes to federal immigration law. He's projecting his insecurities while calling everybody else criminals, except, those who have actually broken federal immigration laws and failed to follow our United States laws. You can't steal things. Felony retail theft. Okay, that proves all you need to know. Brandon Johnson is out there saying that everybody else is a criminal except these people who have actually broken the law. He's saying that slave owners that have been dead 100 years or 100 plus years are the criminals. Like, give me a break, dude. They're dead. We're talking about people now who are coming into the country illegally, and then on top of that, committing things like retail theft. Okay, so the officials protect criminal aliens over American citizens. Obviously, you heard Brandon Johnson say that, and it turns everybody into second-class citizens in their own country. And this is contrary to the oath that you pretend to uphold. Okay, you take an oath to the Constitution. Anybody who participates in the sanctuary state garbage or the sanctuary city garbage, they are actively going against the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, and he wants to point a finger and label everybody else a criminal while allowing lawlessness to thrive in his backyard. Chicago, we're talking about one of the hot spots, the hottest spot for crime. This is carnage that's going on in his city. And he wants to point at everybody else and call them a criminal. But these are people who are not even criminals. These are dead people. Okay. Yes, they committed atrocities. Thank you to our Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, who signed the Emancipation Proclamation and freed the slave. Yes. But he's not addressing the crime in his own backyard. The voters are not easily fooled. We all voted resoundingly for Donald Trump, so he could come in and make America great. So I'm sorry, Brandon Johnson, you are not going to be making America, or you're not going to be stopping making America great again, okay? So you can't put a stop to it. I'll be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. Before we get to Deanne Criswell, she is the former FEMA head. Okay, so she was heading up FEMA under the Biden administration. She's the former one. She went on CNN and she patted herself on the back. And not only did she pat herself on the back, folks, for this abysmal response in North Carolina, but she also proceeded to victim blame by implying that the criticism of FEMA was rooted in ignorance. Yeah, okay. That's victim blaming. It's disgusting. But before we get to that, I did want to play one more clip. Brandon Johnson, of course, he's putting criminal aliens ahead of American citizens, turning you into a second-class citizen in your own country. And that's contrary to what he promised in his oath, or at least the oath he pretends to uphold, right? He wants to point a finger at dead slave owners and say that they're actually the undocumented immigrants that we should be concerned about. What? Take a listen to this. Here we go.
We will continue to protect civil and human rights, and we welcome all individuals and families who want to work, live, and thrive here in our beloved city. The Welcoming City Ordinance is a law, and it is the law of the land here in Chicago. We will uphold it, along with the complementary Illinois Trust Act, to ensure that our immigrant communities are safe. Furthermore, we intend to continue to empower all of our communities throughout our city with crucial information and resources at this time. On the city's website, chicago.gov, we offer a Know Your Rights resource guide, providing all information, tools, and context that our immigrant communities should know. The full force of government from my office, city departments, as well as
Let's get right to CBS News.
We will continue.
Okay. So, number one, like I said, the origins of the 14th Amendment, that's a federal, it gives the feds the ability to deem who is citizen and who's not by two criteria. So you either have to be born or naturalized, and you have to have jurisdiction of the United States, like you have to have jurisdiction thereof within the United States. So you have to have a stake in the United States, meaning that, you can't just be born here. That doesn't mean that you automatically get citizenship. So that's birthright citizenship is unconstitutional via the 14th Amendment. Look at that second clause there. There's two criteria to becoming a citizen. Number one. Number two, the 14th Amendment very clearly states, federal citizenship precedes and supersedes your state level counterpart. The reason why is because the Southern Democrat states, what they did back then, what they wanted to do was say that freed slaves weren't citizens. So we had to create an amendment saying that, hey, the states don't get a say in that kind of thing. So the sanctuary state nonsense, the sanctuary city nonsense is just wrong and it's garbage. So I want to shift gears. Let's get to Deanne. You guys will like this. This is this will make you scream. Scream at the sky this morning. This is incredible. The former FEMA head is not only patting herself on the back, but she's also victim blaming folks because she's implying that, they were ignorant in their criticism of FEMA. So take a listen.
Why do you think there's been such blowback and criticism from people in Western North Carolina about FEMA's response?
I would say the people that I talked to in Western North Carolina were very grateful for our response. I was on the ground personally.
Who?
For 4 weeks.
Okay, but let's say, let's just posit for the sake of argument, because we're running out of time, that it's a minority of people in Western North Carolina, just for the sake of argument. Why do you think those people are being critical?
Because they don't understand what we do.
Why do you think there's...
Because they don't understand what we do. Yeah, they're ignorant. No. There are so many things wrong in just those few sentences that she had said. Oh, excuse me, live radio sneezed. So many things wrong there. Firstly, the fact that she's so arrogant that she believes that anyone in North Carolina is anything but grateful. Okay. She's so arrogant that she believes everyone in North Carolina is grateful. That's not true. Everybody in North Carolina is anything but grateful. Okay. And that proves all you really need to know about this woman. She's just so arrogant, and the lack of self-awareness here is astonishing. Secondly, people are still suffering. So to say that, to get on CNN and kind of portray it as if like this problem is like not a problem anymore, it's just disingenuous, and it just shows that under your leadership, when you were the former, she's a former FEMA head, when you were the FEMA head, under your organization, you weren't even bothered to pretend to care. You still think that everything is hunky-dory. You think that everything is hunky-dory there right now, but they are still suffering in North Carolina. Thirdly, her interpretation of things, it's so delusional. And this is a level of incompetence nobody thought was possible. Additionally, the fact that she blames the victims here, that's where I'm really peeved off about it. She pretends like she's got a clue of what's going on. This is proof that she doesn't have any clue what's going on, that the people, just don't know what we do. No. The people in North Carolina know what you do, and they're upset with your response because you didn't show a lack of remorse, nothing to these individuals in North Carolina who were devastated by Hurricane Helene under the Biden administration. And this is the type of treatment, or this lack of remorse, that was not shown. Remorse was not shown. People don't even get that kind of treatment in third world countries. Okay. And the Biden administration's response to these victims was not even what you would see in a third world country, the response. Okay. So remember, FEMA, I want to play this clip. I've talked about this months ago, and I'm sure you remember this. This actually happened where FEMA was comparing Trump supporters to vicious dogs, and people with Trump supporter signs out in their yards. They weren't getting aid, and they weren't getting help from FEMA because they're, vicious dogs. And it appears that Criswell may have forgotten about this, but I haven't forgotten about this. This FEMA employee had spoken out after being fired. Take a listen.
The highlight here is the Trump campaign signage. But if someone is in another, like an urban community, and it's a different culture and someone feels uncomfortable, we can't go to that home. If you have loose dogs and someone on the team is comfortable with dogs and another person is not, we can't go to that home because of safety precautions.
So you feared the Trump houses. The people on FEMA were fearing the Trump houses like they were fearing people with vicious dogs in their backyard.
Exactly. And that's based on the trends. You can ask FEMA for incident reports. They have those because they ask us to report out if there's an incident at home. And unfortunately, again, the passionate supporters for Trump, some of them were a little bit violent.
But all of them were painted with the same broad brush. All of them as being, we're not going to go near these because we think they're all bad people.
No, because some were registered. Some did receive case inquiries and updates.
Yeah.
Some of them came outside and said, "Hi, I appreciate what you're doing. I would like to participate." And then some were very vocal and firm that they didn't want anything to do with FEMA, and they thought that we were crooks.
And lastly, we've got to go. We're running out of time here. Did this also happen in other places? This was Florida, but did it happen in North Carolina? Did it happen in other places?
Georgia as well. Just ask the crew leads and the specialists. They will discuss their avoidance and their de-escalation methods in the field.
Okay.
And I think Ms. Criswell would be happy to know what's going on.
Okay, so I don't know if she forgot about this, Criswell, but here's the thing, folks. We had Trump supporters, with campaign signage in their yard, and their houses were avoided and by FEMA because they were equated to vicious dogs. Okay, that's what FEMA was doing. Okay, so I want to talk about the empty trailers now. Okay, so we have that, number one. Number two, there are empty trailers just sitting there, and they're temporary homes that have been just sitting behind this guarded fence in West North Carolina. And these hurricane victims, they haven't gotten any of them. Okay, so these are, paid for by taxpayer dollars, right? And it's supposed to be going to these hurricane victims, but they haven't made their way to any hurricane victims. I think only 2 have gone out. These trailers upon trailers upon trailers, and only a couple of them have gone out. These temporary homes for people so they can get out of these hotel rooms. Take a look.
The armed guards and through the chain link fence.
Taxes it. Hard at work.
And you'll see what looks like a simple solution.
I wonder why they're sitting here and not with the family that needs it.
Almost 80 FEMA trailers shipped in from Alabama and Maryland that Aiden Lingerfeld, who works nearby, says haven't budged in months.
They came in, they've been sitting since.
He's far from the only one who shared those words. A WCNC Charlotte viewer emailed me a picture of these trailers and said they've been here since Thanksgiving. She wondered when the federal government was going to deliver them to the people of Western North Carolina. So we came up to Hickory, and during our visit, we ran into a FEMA spokesperson who told us the agency is moving trailers out of here all the time. The federal agency says it's placed 140 households in temporary units like these, has 49 trailers in Helene-impacted counties that are in the process of being installed, and has active work orders for another 18 trailers that will eventually be delivered to a combination of private and commercial sites. But it's not as seamless as the public would hope. County permitting requirements and weather delays have slowed down the process.
We got to get the victim in the home, and logistically it has been tough. The weather has not cooperated at all, but that can't be an excuse.
Philip Barrier says 10 families in Avery County need trailers, and so far, FEMA has only delivered 2.
And I hear about them being deployed every day. They're just not deployed to Avery County.
The county manager says as those families remain temporarily housed in hotels, FEMA has spent 2 weeks looking at a possible site where the agency could place several trailers. Finding the right location that's accessible continues to prove challenging.
Okay, so we've got all these empty trailers sitting and nobody's getting the empty trailers. Criswell and the FEMA employee that said that they were going to be avoiding Trump houses or signs or houses with Trump signs, which doesn't even make a whole lot of sense to me, because if you were just victimized by a hurricane, most likely you don't have a Trump sign. So how would they even know your house was, a Trump supporting house? And to avoid that house, really what I think it goes deeper. And she had, been fired because she was telling people to avoid the Trump houses and the Trump signs, and she allowed that to happen under her watch. I think she was the fall guy here. And what really was going on in FEMA is they were probably pulling like voting data, and they were avoiding areas that trended Donald Trump in the 2020 election, and they were trying to avoid those areas. I don't buy the sign thing. I think it was much deeper than that, and I think it was protocol for FEMA to avoid areas that were trending towards Donald Trump back in 2020. But, Criswell and FEMA, they are everything that's wrong with bureaucracy. And even if they tried, they would not prove to be more competent than they are. They cannot try. And even if they tried, I don't think that they would appear competent at all. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. You're listening to me on YouTube as well, Rumble, Twitter, Facebook. You guys can subscribe to the channel. I'll be right back. We're going to talk a little bit about Meta employees and how they're demanding tampons be returned to the men's bathrooms because Mark Zuckerberg pulled them out of there. I'll be right back. Hey, go ahead and smash that like button. Yes, I do read the comments. I will read your comments as they come on in. Some of these governors are acting outside the federal constitution, federal law, Trump state law. Otherwise, we have 50 fiefdoms, not states. So, yeah, the United States of America. And I'm all about local control, and I do think that like local control is very important. But when it comes to issues like immigration and national security, national public safety, so those issues definitely are outside of the purview of the state. So the sanctuary state stuff, is just complete garbage. Your federal citizenship is what matters, and the federal government defines what your citizenship is, and how, and really the Constitution kind of lays it out, because we had to define what a citizen was after the freed slaves were called not citizens by Democrats. We had to define what that was at a federal level, and your federal citizenship precedes and supersedes your state level counterpart. So that issue specifically, and I'm all about local control, but when it comes to national security and immigration, that is a federal issue. So yes, you're exactly right. It's the art of the deal versus the art of the steal. Does communism stand for organized crime syndicate? Yeah, so I talked about it, where I think that you have these people who are all about the art of the deal. So for example, Donald Trump, he's getting all kinds of backlash this morning over the Canada stuff. So the United States does purchase a lot of Canadian oil exports. Yes, we do purchase a lot of that. 97% of the oil you guys, Canada, exports. 97% of the oil exports from Canada is what we purchase. Okay. So, and that accounts for 81% of their total oil production. Okay. So we buy a ton of oil from Canada. Canada, I think they're threatening right now to cut off their oil supply, which is just like silly. It's all about the art of the deal. Donald Trump knows this. He knows exactly what he's doing. He doesn't care about the lumber. He doesn't care about the oil coming in from Canada. Why? Because we're getting the oil at a discounted rate. Anyway, it might save us a little bit of money, but at the end of the day, it's raw oil, and it probably is much more work than it is worth. Okay, so we can do the same thing here in America with the Bakken Shale oil pipeline, and we can refine it ourselves. Canada doesn't transport refined oil. This is not refined oil. This is raw oil. And it doesn't do us much good. Like, it's really not that like great. It's like somebody who gives you a Christmas gift that's like, $1 or something like that. That's kind of what we're looking at here. Like, we could definitely do without it. And they don't have the leverage that they think they have economically. In fact, I think that we're going to destroy Canada in that we stop purchasing their oil completely, because it's a $124 billion a year industry. And they're selling their raw oil down the Keystone Pipeline to American refineries. We refine it, and that refining process is, expensive. And we don't need their raw oil. We have raw oil here in the United States that we can refine ourselves. So Canada doesn't think that, or they don't have the leverage that they think they have. And really, like, I talked about this, you got your Governor J.B. Pritzker talking about this. They want us relying on all of our foreign adversaries. And I know Canada is an ally, but they want us relying on other people for oil, for lumber, for electric vehicles, for solar panels, for windmills. Okay, that's what this organized, really it is. It's organized crime syndicate, this communism. They are selling you out. And it is criminal what they're doing, because they're working with even our foreign adversaries. The CCP, for example, the tax credits to companies to operate here within the United States who have ties to the CCP. They're a foreign adversary. And this company actually has ties to individuals who practice in slave labor, child slave labor. And that's not good, clearly, and that's a criminal. And they're selling you out, and they're buying up all of this stuff from other people. And meanwhile, you're the one who has to deal with the fallout here. So, for example, the lumber industry in Canada, they dump all of their cheap lumber here, and everybody buys it from Canada. We have to wait on Canada for their lumber. Nobody wants to buy the American lumber industry, or from the American lumber industry, because it's too expensive. And that means no jobs here. And that means our housing prices are going to skyrocket, because we're constantly waiting for Canada to dump their products in here. Whereas if we were to just make it here, that's one step that we can eliminate. Same with the oil, right? If we were just refine it ourselves, it's one step that we can eliminate, and we're bringing more jobs to the economy. So Donald Trump knows exactly what he's doing. Woohoo! Good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. We've talked about so much this morning. I've been talking about Canada threatening to dry up their oil supply to the United States. Okay, go ahead, do it. This is raw oil that comes in through the Keystone pipeline, I think it is. We have a Bakken Shale. That's what it's called, the Bakken Shale pipeline that we can take from. That's raw oil, and we refine it. We have to refine Canada's oil. They don't even have, even if they could refine it themselves, which they can't, by the way, they can't because they don't have the infrastructure to do that. Even if they could refine it themselves, they don't have the infrastructure to transport it to the United States. This is raw oil that we already have here in the United States. And Donald Trump knows exactly what he's doing with Canada. They're accusing Donald Trump of a trade war with Canada. Like, relax. Canada does not have the leverage that you think they have. Yeah, we buy a ton of discounted Canadian oil, but we could definitely go without it. And it's a $124 billion a year industry for Canada. And in fact, I think it's going to actually wind up hurting Canada more than it does us in any kind of way. So we have to stop playing nice with Canada. They are violating trade agreements, specifically with the lumber industry, where they're subsidizing that lumber, dumping it into the United States. It's way cheaper because they're subsidizing it and we're not subsidizing ours. So everybody's buying the Canadian lumber and we have to wait on it, which is bringing up housing costs. So Donald Trump, he says, look, we're done playing nice. I'm not going to let you screw us over anymore. And I'll say it again for the people in the back. These people are ripping us off. Okay, that's why they're looking down the barrel of a 25% tariff. Okay, you wouldn't be looking down the barrel of a 25% tariff if you weren't subsidizing your crap and dumping it into the United States. And if you just refined your oil and gave us a product worth anything. Okay. So, that's what we've been talking about this morning. We talked about Brandon Johnson claiming that, or defending illegal immigrants, while he was saying that dead slave owners are the actual undocumented immigrants. So I don't really understand. Quite literally, I just think he's an idiot, Mayor Brandon Johnson. I don't understand how he got from, I'm going to defend the illegal immigrants, the illegal criminal aliens, by the way, who commit crimes like retail theft. You've got sex offenders who have been here since 2009. They haven't been deported yet. And it took Tom Homan like 1 day to do it, 24 hours to find that guy and deport him. From 2009, he's been a sex offender and he's here illegally. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson didn't do it and his guys didn't do it. And he goes, oh, it's not our job. Yeah, it is your job. The Trust Act is actually, it's debated. And I think that it deals with the criminal element here. So if you're committing crimes while you're also an illegal immigrant, it definitely doesn't apply to you. The Trust Act says that you're prohibited from working with federal authorities as law enforcement with immigration. Now, it doesn't apply to the criminal element here, where if this illegal alien, number one, commits like murder or retail theft, if you're on top of entering through an illegal port of entry, the Trust Act does not apply to you, number one. Number two, I don't even think it really applies to you if you enter through an illegal port of entry. Here's what I think the Trust Act actually is all about. It's more so we're not going to aid in federal authorities asking for our help. Like, say, for example, Maria, she is here on a work visa. Okay, and she's working at Rivian. Okay, if she's at the Rivian and she's on a work visa, and her work visa seems to have expired, or there was some sort of discrepancy on her paperwork, and ICE comes in and they say, hey, local law enforcement, we want to bring Maria in and we want to question her. Or somebody has a green card and the authenticity of the marriage there is, in question. Hey, local authorities, we want you to go tail Maria because we don't think that she's actually married to Brad of the United States, and her green card I don't think is going to be effective. Now that is and I think we're going to revoke her green card. That is outside of the job description of a local law enforcement officer, and that's what the Trust Act is really all about. Forcing law enforcement to work your immigration, okay, to work through these immigration practices and figure out who's illegal and who's not. Now, deportation of people who are deemed definitely criminal illegal aliens. So on top of the crime of illegally entering the country, but also your illegal immigrants who enter the country through an illegal port of entry. Those are criminals as well. And if those are two facts, or if those two facts check out, then local law enforcement, at least this is the way I interpret, and several lawmakers in the state of Illinois have interpreted the Trust Act, that you as the local law enforcement have an obligation, not even, a choice really in the matter, to assist federal authorities in those deportations, because it's dealing with public safety, okay, because those are criminals. So I want to talk a little bit about Meta. Meta, the employees here, they want the tampons back in the bathroom. So I know that, Tampon Tim would be very, very happy. He would be proud here, given it's extremely not likely that a single man used a tampon at this Meta headquarters. Extremely unlikely that ever happened. The company has decided to not continue with this insanity. Okay, Mark Zuckerberg said, "Hey, we're going to pull the tampons out of the boys' bathrooms." However, in progressive la la land, biological reality takes a back seat, and then you end up with this story where several Meta employees protested this perfectly sane decision by bringing in tampons they'll never use. Okay, so they want to bring in tampons to these men's bathrooms at the Meta headquarters. Okay, and the Meta employees are upset that there are no more tampons in these bathrooms. So this is an internal move. This is according to Fox Business, that irks the woke Meta employees. The removal of women's sanitary products from men's bathrooms, which the company had previously provided for non-binary and transgender employees, according to the New York Times on Wednesday. To protest Mr. Zuckerberg's actions, the Meta workers brought in their own tampons, pads, and liners into the men's bathrooms. 5 people with knowledge of the effort had said that that's what they did. And order to protest this, they brought in their own sanitary napkins and tampons. A group of employees also circulated a petition to save the tampons. The vice president of the workplace Workplace Services reportedly emailed the petition signatories directly, suggesting that while it had not been the intention of Meta leadership to make employees feel unwelcomed or excluded in our offices, at this point, we do not have plans to revisit our on-site amenities offering. So in this email, they said, okay, despite your protest, we're not going to be putting these tampons back into the bathrooms. The email, however, did promise to share your feedback with leadership. Okay, so really what I think that this is Mark Zuckerberg, and I don't trust the guy at all. I think he deserves to be behind bars for what he did. He censored half of the population here through his platform, and he wasn't abiding by Section 230 provisions, and that's against the law. And he operated outside of the law for a very long time. He also was influential in swaying the election towards Joe Biden, allegedly. I think that the election was stolen. Well, it was stolen by Mark Zuckerberg because he censored the Hunter Biden laptop story, which ultimately led to people saying, hey, I would have changed my vote and it would have been enough to give Donald Trump all of the votes, right? But I don't trust him. I think that this was like a move. Like, this was definitely Mark Zuckerberg trying to get cozy with conservatives, like he has been for a couple of weeks now, because he wants to do what's best for Meta. He wants to avoid prosecution. He wants to avoid being held accountable for his actions for the past 4 years. And what he's trying to do is play this, like, it's almost like virtue signaling, but for on the conservative side, where he's trying to say, oh, I took the tampons out of the bathrooms. And then they encourage, like, yeah, share your feedback with leadership. It's fine. Like, these protests to try to make this like into a bigger deal than it actually was. These are like, 5 employees who are upset about this. So at the end of the day, all of it's silly, but I think that Mark Zuckerberg did this on purpose. I'll be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. Why must I buy my wife or my coworker or girlfriend a tampon in public? Obviously, they're not for me. Okay, that is not what the argument is here. Meta deliberately put tampons into the men's bathrooms for non-binary transgender individuals who probably can't use tampons, but collect the tampons because it's a deranged behavior. And that's insane. Okay. For example, you wouldn't have a diabetic, like somebody who's non-diabetic and they, identify as diabetic, you wouldn't like provide them insulin. Okay. They don't need the insulin. Okay. You don't need a tampon if you're a man. Now, okay, if you have to buy, and this is what really bothers me about this whole thing, free tampons in bathrooms. It doesn't really make a ton of sense to me. I mean, they're nice. Being a woman, I'll tell you that it's nice. But I mean, at the end of the day, if you're a woman, you carry around tampons with you all of the time. Tampons are not that expensive. In total, you probably will pay, I don't know, epoxy tampons is like, I want to say like $10, I don't know, and it'll last you like 6 months. I mean, in total, you're probably spending, 20 to $50 maybe. Okay, I'll be generous, $50 maybe a year on tampons. That's it. Okay. So that's what we're talking about here. I don't even understand why people put them in the bathrooms. But number one, it wouldn't make sense for you to provide insulin to somebody who isn't diabetic. So why does it make sense to provide somebody a tampon who doesn't need it? It makes absolutely no sense. And it's kind of ridiculous. You could put those tampons into the female bathroom where those people actually use it. And you've got a fully stocked tampon dispenser in the male bathroom where nobody's using it. That's just a waste. At that point, you might as well just put them in the female's bathroom, right? I mean, that would be the fair and most logical explanation here. And I mean, they're nice. The free tampons are nice. I definitely go in, and if there's free tampons, I like stock up and put them in my purse, right? But most women, like, there's no need for the free tampons in the bathrooms. I'm sorry, but if you don't have $50 a year, and I'm being very generous with that, or it's probably more like $30 a year. If you don't have that, you've got much bigger issues, okay, than not being able to afford tampons, or than the tampon issue. If you can't afford $50 a year, I don't know what to say. There's all kinds of things that I require, as an individual, and I'm not going to expect the government to put the tampons in the bathroom for me. Okay. And if you want like private bathrooms, like I think it's really nice that, you have hotels, they'll put, tampons and stuff in the bathrooms, and, like that's a nice thing. And if private sector wants to do that, then yeah, I'm going to go to the hotel with the free tampons, you know what I mean, over the other one. Probably wouldn't affect my decision because women have tampons on them all of the time. Like, and that just goes to show you how removed from reality a lot of these people actually are. They're just removed from reality. All right, we're back. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. Yes, we were talking about the tampons in the Meta bathrooms. The Meta employees were outraged, these woke Meta employees, and then they were protesting by bringing in their own tampons. You wouldn't give somebody who's a non-diabetic insulin. So why would you give somebody who doesn't need a tampon or use a tampon tampons? It makes absolutely no sense. Why don't you just take the tampons that are in the men's bathroom and put them in the women's bathroom? Number one. Number two, the government putting in free tampon dispensers and stuff like that, I just don't like it because it's just so silly. Like, where does it end? There's plenty of things that I like to do, like cut my hair. Am I going to expect the government to pay for my hair salon appointments? No. Tampons, max, ladies, we're talking about $50 a year, maybe. That's on the high end. Okay. Maybe you get $30 a year or something, or 30. And there's all kinds of people within the private sector, a lot of nonprofit organizations who, make tampons accessible to women who can't afford them. And at this point, I mean, it's just such a silly, silly topic. Okay. The fact that these people think that removing tampons is transphobic is beyond reason. Okay. That's not transphobic. If you don't need one, men, then why would I give you one? Okay. It's just wasting space putting a tampon dispenser in a men's bathroom. And I would bet anything that not a single man used one. Okay. I bet it was fully stocked, but yet they're so deranged. And it's a deranged cause that they've made up in their heads, essentially. And I wonder if the people who took part in this protest at Meta, I bet they're the same people who were fact-checking the masses, so-called fact-checking the masses, more like censoring individuals. And I think that this is really just a move by Mark Zuckerberg to get attention and to seem like he's one of us. He wants to be a part of the club now because that's probably what's best for Meta at this point. He doesn't want to see consequences for his actions. And it's just insane. All of this is just totally insane. Slowly, we are going to be making America great again. And I'm excited about it. I'm excited that we are going to be making America great and sane again, where men don't get tampons because they're don't need them. Why would you give a diabetic insulin or a non-diabetic insulin? You wouldn't do that. It's silly. You guys have a blessed rest of your day. We're going to be back at it again tomorrow morning, bright and early, 6 a.m. Head on over to cities929.com. We actually have some really cool things for steals and deals. We have a package where you can buy some roses in a vase, and then gift cards as well to Texas Roadhouse, Brass Pig Smokehouse and Ale House. Get them while they're hot because we only have a limited supply. Okay, so you get a free t-shirt as well. You can get a free t-shirt, some gift certificates to some restaurants, and some roses. Don't be the guy that last minute doesn't get anything and then you're like stuck with gas station roses. These are really nice roses, so head to cities929.com and then click on the Steals and Deals logo. You guys have a blessed rest of your day. Bye-bye. I love you. Okay, folks. Do condoms in females? No, they don't. Condoms anywhere, male, female bathrooms, where does it end? Okay, right? I mean, if like it's a private company and they're putting it in their bathrooms, like I really could care less. But if we're having the government weigh in on these issues, it's just kind of silly. Condoms being in female bathrooms, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I'm not for that either. I mean, I don't think just take accountability over your own freaking life. I mean, can we just talk about, condoms? I mean, what if you're, wanting to have sex, then just go buy yourself a pack of condoms. Okay. I just don't understand what's so hard about this. And not to mention, even if you don't and you can't afford any of that, there is literally a nonprofit for everything that exists. If you want free condoms, there's a charitable organization out there for you. Okay. That will provide you free condoms. If you need tampons, there's a charitable organization that will provide you tampons. Most of the time, churches will do that for you, provide you, I don't know about condoms, but provide you sanitary napkins, tampons, whatever. Take accountability over your own flippin' life. Why the hell is the government forcing or, Meta, this private company, they're a private company. If they want to put, female products in a female bathroom, that's fine. If they want to put male products in a male bathroom, that makes sense. Now, if you're putting female products in the male bathroom, you're just wasting product at that point, and that's kind of on you as a private company. But it's outrageous. It's just insanity to put female products in a male bathroom. And the same thing, if you're putting male products in a female bathroom, then yeah, that'd be weird too. I mean, it's all very strange. Just take accountability over your own life and buy your own tampons and buy your own condoms. At the end of the day, that's my position on it. Why the hell would I need to provide you them as a company? If I owned my own company, I'd be like, sure, okay, I'll have maybe tampons in the bathroom and maybe condoms in the bathroom. But at the end of the day, I don't think I'm going to waste money on those products because we're talking about $50 a year, and I'm being generous with that. It's probably more like $30 a year. If you can't do that, we've got much bigger problems. Okay, if you're not able to work, and then you need to contact probably a nonprofit organization to provide you those materials, the tampons and the condoms. But there's plenty of generous people out there who will do that for you and provide you free tampons. I mean, almost all of the food pantries give you like tampons, free tampons. Food pantries given to you, churches will give them to you. I mean, I don't know if you are struggling for a tampon and say you're a transgender male and you're delusional, somebody will give you one. If you go up and approach somebody, I'm sure somebody will give you one. This is just such a ridiculous topic. And really, I think what it was Mark Zuckerberg was just wanting to kind of virtue signal, I guess, to the conservatives that he's one of us. And it was really silly all to begin with, because I don't believe a single thing that Mark Zuckerberg says. Really, I think he needs to be held accountable for his censoring of Americans. Bye-bye. Love you. Subscribe to the channel. We'll be back again tomorrow.